According to the 2022 Data Breach Investigations Report, the human remains the #1 driver of breaches today, demonstrating that cybersecurity is no longer just a technical challenge, but a human one as well. But how do you manage the human risks of cybersecurity? It starts with measurement. Only by effectively quantifying human risk can organizations engage employees with relevant activities to truly change human behavior. That's human risk management. Map key human behaviors to the business risks that matter most to your organization for free by visiting securityweekly.com/living security.
Application Security Weekly delivers interviews and news from the worlds of AppSec, DevOps, and all the other ways people find and fix software flaws. Join us as we explore how the latest news highlights modern security practices or reminds us of the missing ones. We also bring insights from interviews on topics from training to threat modeling, from open source tools to cloud-native techniques, plus an occasional reference from new wave to synthwave. Find us at securityweekly.com/subscribe or look for Application Security Weekly wherever you pick your podcasts.
Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Jason Albuquerque and Josh Marpet. Follow us on LinkedIn for updates across our organization, show highlights, and more. You can find us by searching for Security Weekly Productions. All right, gentlemen, articles for this week. I start with I like this first one because we talk about it all the time, Jason, right? We talk about
how it for years. Talking about it for years.
So somebody's listening to the show because they're writing articles about it finally.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, they kick off the article talking about how, CISOs are really starting to feel the struggle that the CIOs felt 20 years ago about really breaking through into the executive ranks and what that means, and giving some really good areas that CISOs can focus on from a business executive perspective, and then actions that they can take to make themselves successful. So things like breaking the barrier of just being a technology leader, focusing on risk management for the business, learning the financials of the organization, partnering with the CFO. And then having collaboration across the entirety of the business with every business unit, because knowing what motivates them and how they influence the business and what they need to do to move the needle for their business line is extremely important, because you need to be able to align with that. And then ultimately, we talk about it all the time. How do you effectively communicate? How do you translate the technical and the risk to the business?
Yeah, that risk management component is one we've been harping on for a long time, Jason, right? This is part of the responsibilities of this role, is understanding how to mitigate business risk. And it's that risk management component that has been a gap, because the role was primarily a technical kind of role until recently. And we actually talk about this next week in the pre-record, not to give away any insights, but we actually dig into some of this in the CISO role and the future of that role.
Yeah, I've got to say that this is a topic I'm actually kind of passionate about, and I'm going to push something that Jason said. One of the primary roles of the CISO is to understand how to communicate the technical and business risks that are technical business to the business in business terminology. I think communication is one of the most important skills a CISO has, but I'm going to sort of go against what you're saying to a certain extent, because I don't think a CISO should be a C-level. And the reason I say that is not... Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, you should watch next week's show.
Absolutely. Next.
Well, look, I'm not on next week's show. I'm not on next week's show, so I'm going to give my opinion for 2 seconds. But the point I'm going to make, and this may be something you talk about next week, I don't know. I wasn't there at the pre-record, but I think a CISO's job is to provide options to the C-levels, and then implement whatever option that the C-level and the C-suite and board select. As such, they should not be making the choice. They should be providing the options with the proper communication of the risks inherent in those choices. And
Josh, I'll completely agree with that, in the confines of the existing responsibilities that a CISO has, and not having the additional responsibilities that are starting to fall heavily on the shoulders of quote unquote CISOs, which is why we're going to talk about what that evolution looks like in the future for the future of a CISO.
Oh, I'll be watching. Thank you.
The other thing that I pulled out of this article too, which I think is extremely important, especially sitting in that executive seat, is making sure that, when you first start your role, when you first get into that position, make sure that you're building a plan. I'm a big fan of a 120-day plan. This article calls out building out a 90-day plan, but that is such an important aspect of getting in that seat, evaluating your organization, and then building the journey to where your organization needs to be, and being able to articulate that to your fellow executives and the board of directors, so that way you can show a path to maturity. Such an important thing to do. And then don't just leave it at that. Make sure that you're checking up on your success quarterly, and then build out annual strategic plans for your department. And please align those goals to the organizational goals, to the business goals. So that way you can articulate how you're helping the business move the needle for their organizational goals. Huge.
Yes. And it's something we do internally, right? Like everything I do is 90-day planning. Everything, Jason. Like I can't build beyond 90 days. It's sometimes too hard to move beyond the quarter, right? And all my OKRs, all my objectives and key results are to measure the success of that 90-day plan, right? So on a quarterly basis, we're constantly refining plans, aligning our OKRs to the overall business objectives so the executive team can measure across the board. CISOs need to be doing the same thing.
100%. And you're dead on, right? Look at how you're doing quarterly, and then make sure you have a cadence where you're checking in on the overall business goals of the organization, so that way you can ensure you're keeping alignment with them.
And I want to point out that both of you said beautifully important things, wonderful. And you're both pointing out that from the business comes the policies and the vision and guidance, and it drops down to the CISO where they put policy in place to implement the vision and guidance. Then it drops down to the next level to implement the process and procedures and so on and so forth. This is all chained together. And you both mentioned that without being explicit about it. So forgive me, I'm just going to be explicit about it.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, I follow a truly cascading goals model, right? Where you look at the overall business goals and then you cascade down throughout the organizations from there. And to be honest with you, the whole collaboration piece we just talked about, helping your business unit leaders, your colleagues, align as well. That's part of your job, right? So you can actually help your colleagues, the other executives, align to the business goals as well. Be a mentor.
Absolutely, man. Beautifully said. Well said.
So that leads a little bit into Article 2 around making the case for cybersecurity budgets, right? Because that's the next step. And this article, very tied to the previous article, is you got to align to the business strategy, right? Which means you have to understand the business strategy, you have to have the communications and the collaboration with the rest of the business to actually align budgets to these strategic business initiatives.
Oh yeah, 100%. And again, it's, they call it out here. Make sure you're looking at it through the lens of business strategy, not just about technology. So that means you have to communicate in the language of the business. Make cybersecurity a unique selling proposition. Now, one of the things I did take a little issue with in the article, and it's under the get personal with your communications section, they call out cybersecurity doesn't generate revenue. It mitigates risk of incurring unbudgeted costs, much like an insurance policy. I'm going to call that out. I do not like that statement whatsoever. I think leaders in the cybersecurity space and the risk management space have a unique opportunity to have a 30,000-foot view of the entirety of the organization and can really influence revenue generation. I'm a living example of that, and I've done that over the course of my career. CISOs have an opportunity where they can sit back and they can find new market share for a company. Think about this. CMMC comes to bear, right? And now you have DoD contractors who need to meet certain regulation or certain compliance standards. Well, guess what? That DoD market, that DoD manufacturing market may have not been a market that you targeted, but now it could be. So I think CISOs have an opportunity, just like the CIOs of the past, 20 years ago when they were struggling, have an opportunity to show how they can align with the business and truly help innovate to generate revenue.
I'm going to back you up on that. and say that it's also a marketing opportunity. CISOs and security organizations, apparatus, whatever you want to call them, have an opportunity to create an environment that provides and produces trust from the customers. When we watch over your data, you trust us. And that is a huge marketing and sales opportunity to engender bringing customers and keeping customers' loyalty. So I absolutely agree with you.
Market differentiation, no doubt about
it. And bringing customers on. I'm just telling you, anybody who deals in the data side of the world, all the privacy and security reviews that you go through to get your product through these companies, if you do not have a good CISO and a good set of security priorities in place, it's just going to slow down revenue. It just will.
Agreed.
Yeah. OMB outlines the strategic priorities. So, Josh, this is perfect that you joined us for this segment because you track the space a little more closely than some of the others of us. OMB comes out, identifies the priorities for next year's budget, really around these 5 areas: defend critical infrastructure, disrupt and dismantle threat actors, shape market forces to drive security and resilience, invest in a resilient future, and forge international partnerships to pursue those shared goals.
You know, they're great goals. They're fantastic goals. They're wonderful goals. But are you going to tell me that we're, for example, going to take down all the ransomware gangs this year? I don't think so. Okay, so what I think is, and don't get me wrong, I am fully in favor of this. I love this very much. I really do. And what they're trying to do is they're not saying we're going to complete this year. Okay, what they're saying is these are our long-term goals, and what can we do this year to evolve and further these goals? Okay, sharing information sharing isn't going to be perfected this year. Working together with other countries to share appropriate information, that's not even going to be designed this year, potentially. Okay, CISA is working heavily on information sharing, massively. They're putting massive effort behind it and doing a great job. They've got fantastic people over there, okay? But they're not going to be done this year. Sure. So I think these are fantastic goals, but they are long-term. Don't expect it to be perfect. Not fast.
Yeah, and it kind of shows that they're going all in with it, right? Because this article talks about how they're pushing the budget priorities for all the federal departments to prove that they're going to align their budgets with all 5 of these criteria, right? And that budget's up for approval. And if they don't align, right, they could get their budgets, and not get the budget money, right? They could get declined on some budget items. So it's kind of forcing the departments to align to these 5 strategies, and prove that they're going to. So I think it's just incentivizing them to start moving the needle.
Yeah, the other thing that's in here, and Josh, real quick, because I want your take on this. One of the things we talked about, I think it was late last year, was the whole implementation of the zero trust strategy. Even that strategy is not going to be implemented by the end of this year, is it? I mean, no. Some of the budgets took forever to get approved to move some of this forward.
I think it may be defined by the end of this year. Zero trust for the longest time was a marketing term, and everybody's like, what's zero trust mean? And then somebody came up with ZTNA, zero trust network access. And then, actually, to be honest, it is defined. If you're not clear on the definition, let's be clear on it. Everything is the same. Every connection you make is the same. And there's an authorization and authentication barrier at every connection. End of story. That's it. It's really simple in the end of it. Okay. But that took a long time. That took a long time just to get to a definition we could understand and agree on. So what now? All right. Is everybody going to have it in place by next year? No, you've got to redesign existing systems. You've got to rebuild things. You've got to really refactor a lot of stuff. There's no way it's going to be done in 1 year. Hell, it's probably going to take 3 to 5 years to even make a measurable dent. All right. But along with things like CMMC, which you mentioned just a minute ago, Jason, it's almost like they're enforcing grassroots efforts, because with CMMC, every contractor has to be compliant. Every contractor has to be certified. And so what you have to do is you have to have certified contractors working on your contracts, or the contracts are not allowed to be awarded. So they're just making it so that the environment is it has built-in table stakes. You must be this tall to ride.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean that's exactly what's happening with this, right? It's you will get your budget money as long as you can prove that you align to these 5 strategies. So it's that same, dangle the carrot mentality to get people to move on their initiative.
Yes. Next up, unleashing CEO productivity. Again, great leadership article here, talks about the power of effective leadership and how to improve productivity. To me, it's all about setting clear goals and priorities. I think one of the big challenges organizations face is you're trying to split the difference, right? We've read the book, most of us on the Security Weekly side. We're constantly splitting the difference, and we're constantly conflicting goals and priorities because we're trying to have our cake and eat it too. And I think it's really hard as a leader sometimes to really just go all in and set very clear and achievable goals that keep an organization focused. To me, that's one of the biggest challenges, I think, especially in this economy right now, because you're trying to save revenue at the same time you're trying to innovate, and it's just creating too many conflicts internally, and it just slows things down.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's the foundation of your strategy for success, is making sure you're going in, into your planning with clear goals and what those priorities are, so that way you can execute effectively and efficiently. And I think those next two are important for execution, which is delegating and empowering others, because you can have clear goals, you can have your strategy, you can have your priorities, and really know how you're going to go into the year to move the needle. But if you can't delegate and have a team around you to help you execute, you're not going to be successful. You can't own it all. So you have to be willing to delegate, empower others. And then the third piece is managing your time, right? And that delegation is part of managing your time. What do I have the bandwidth to do? What can I complete successfully? What can I, put my effort into to ensure I'm getting quality out of my time? And if I don't have the bandwidth, I need to find a teammate that I can pass this off to and work with on the strategy. So those other two are critical for the success of your goals and priorities.
Yeah, I'm going to just point out that the only resource you can't buy is time. Mm-hmm. Like literally, it's the one thing you can make money, you can do things, you can get people, but you cannot get time back. If you don't have enough of it, find some way to offload some of those responsibilities. Jason, I couldn't agree more. As an entrepreneur, as a CISO, as a busy person, that's it. That's the way it is.
That's it. There's only 24 hours in a day, and unfortunately, as humans, we have to sleep. Otherwise, we won't be effective. So it's very limited. And we also have, families and lives and other things we need to do to stay mentally fit. So there's only so many minutes in the day, and what I loved about this article was there were two sections of it. One of them was about strategies to be successful and effective, but the other was about habits that you can do to be effective and a strong leader. And, one of the things I loved was embrace a morning routine. The best days that I have is when I get up at 5 o'clock, 5:15 in the morning, and I get a little exercise in, and I'm up before the rest of the crew at work, and I've already been 2 hours into my day by the time everybody else is starting. So it's just beautiful, right? And practicing communication, so that way you're confident and articulate. Always learn, and then the work-life balance is huge. Work-life balance is absolutely huge. You cannot be an effective leader if you're not taking care of yourself. You have to take care of yourself, and you have to have that balance in order to stay mentally sharp.
Which is why you're in Alaska next week and I'm in Portugal.
You got it. Absolutely.
All right, next article. I love whenever there's a sports reference, I got to pull it in, right? Cybersecurity is a team sport. It boils down to one thing, folks. Communicate. Have you heard us loud and clear yet?
Are you getting the hint? Again, yeah, it is. I mean, it's communication. It's building trust around the organization, and it's making sure that your cybersecurity team is not operating in a vacuum, operating in a silo. You have to get out there and learn the business. You have to get out there and strategize with the business and build relationships. And it is a team sport, right? You're only as effective as the rest of your organization. So you have to be out there building those relationships and building that strength. So that way, the entirety of the organization sees cybersecurity as a business enabler and a partner.
Yeah. Which leads into the last and final article, which is improving communication skills with the Dale Carnegie Method, because communication is so important. I think we've touched on it in three or four of the articles this week, right? It's about communication. It's like, so where do you start? And so Dale Carnegie was known for his communication skills and teaching people how to grow their skills. This is something I did long ago. I've gone through so many of these different speaker courses and things over the years to improve my communication skills. But these are some great kind of tips and tricks to help others who don't have an opportunity to go through, formalized training. Like, where do you start, and what are the things you can do to improve your skill set? That's what this article helps to articulate for people using Dale Carnegie's method.
Yeah, and I mean, Dale Carnegie is one of the OGs when it comes to effective communication skills, right? How to win friends and influence people. I mean, that's one of the quote unquote classics for me, And yeah, I mean, honestly, the article breaks it down into really three pieces: building your self-confidence, enhancing your people skills, and then developing those communication skills. In self-confidence, you break it down. It's about knowing yourself, knowing how you operate, your strengths, your shortcomings, what you're doing to strengthen those gaps. And then don't be afraid to take risks, right? So that self-confidence is so important in being able to communicate and articulate yourself and build trust. And then, enhancing the people skills. We talk about it all the time. It's empathy, it's listening, it's treating others with respect, it's having that genuine interest in people, engaging with people, building relationships with people, and helping your colleagues and folks that you work with, folks that you're partnered with, your third parties that you work with and contractors, and really caring about their interests and being successful together. It's huge.
I think people don't realize the caring aspect of that, right? We kind of sometimes get wrapped around the axle with all the other things, but it's like, put yourself in somebody else's shoes to build that empathy, to build a better relationship so you can have a better communication path, right? We forget about that sometimes because we're just so busy in and out of meetings all day, running from meeting to, dropping and getting on another Zoom call, right? Nobody runs to a meeting anymore.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's always come down to a basic perspective. I am in a service industry. I am in a service department. I am there to serve. Well, when you have that mentality of being there to serve, you're going to listen actively. You're going to show empathy. You're going to have genuine interest in others because you're there to best serve them. So it's having that services mentality.
Yeah, absolutely. We are a service industry. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. Next week is a pre-recorded Say Easy, Do Hard episode as we're all on vacation. So we'll see you all again in 2 weeks on Business Security Weekly.